this crazy world, it's so hard to unwind. So I'm taking time just for me. Gonna find my peace, let my soul be free. In the quiet moments, that's where I'll find a little room to breathe, leave it all behind. Give me room to breathe, I need some time to heal my heart, to clear my mind. Gonna love myself, yeah, I believe in the power of me. Just give me room to breathe.
Good morning, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of the Room2Breathe Podcast. I am your host, Life Coach 614, and I just want to take a moment to say that I am truly grateful that you chose to make space to be here today. Now, before we jump into today's conversation, let me ask you for a quick moment of love and support. If you're feeling the energy in this space, go ahead and tap that screen, like, comment, but most importantly, please share this out with someone who could use a little healing, a little peace, or just a reminder that they're not alone. And if this is your first time here, or you've been watching and haven't hit that button yet, go ahead and subscribe so that way you stay connected whenever a new episode drops. You deserve to stay poured into. I also want to personally invite you to check out our digital home at theselfcareclub.org. That is where you'll find everything from affirmative apparel to motivational merch, plus free resources designed to support your growth, your healing, and, just your journey back to yourself. And if you're ready for a deeper connection, I want to invite you to join us inside the Room2Breathe Project community over on School. That's our safe space where we're not just talking about healing, but we're actively doing the work together. Real conversations, real support, real growth in community. Just know that you don't have to do this alone. We are healing in community, growing one moment, one breath at a time. So today, I want you to give yourself permission to pause, permission to reflect, permission to make space for peace, for growth, and most importantly, for you. And if something in today's episode speaks to your spirit, don't be shy. Drop those green hearts in the chat. That is how we say, I am healing, I am growing, and I'm choosing to show up for me. Now, go ahead, get comfortable, take a breath, and let's get ready to breathe, reflect, and grow together. Today's conversation is one of those sacred ones. Not because it's easy, not because it magically ties grief up in a little bow, but because it tells the truth about what happens after the flowers fade, after the calls slow down, after everybody else returns to normal while you're still trying to figure out how to breathe around the absence that changed your life forever. A lot of people know how to show up for the funeral, but very few people know how to stay present for the grief that follows. And today's guest understands that reality both professionally and personally. Kelly Edmondson is a nurse, a certified grief counselor, a bereaved mother, and the founder of Timely Presence, a year-long grief support service created to help grieving families feel remembered and supported long after the funeral ends. Her work was born from an unimaginable loss, and, also from a deep understanding that grief doesn't operate on a schedule and healing doesn't happen because the world decided enough time has passed. So, family, I need for you to help me welcome Kelly into the Room2Breathe studio today. Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Hi, Coach. Thanks for inviting me into this space of just healing and real conversation. Opportunity to speak to your audience.
Yes, we are so happy to have you here. And I know it can be such a heavy topic. So I am just thankful that you are taking time out of your day, just to share your perspective and, what you offer to our community, because there are so many people out here grieving, one thing or another. And that support is something that isn't often talked about, but it is always needed. So thank you for being here today.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. And so before we jump into the conversation, Kelly, I always like to do a check-in with the soul first. So I'm going to ask you, how's your spirit doing today?
I have had a blessed day, and I'm going to tell you why. I've had the opportunity to just connect to people around how they're taking care of themselves in grief. I ran into a woman today, and she shared that I had suggested she really enroll in grief counseling, and she just shared how that has changed the trajectory of her healing. And when you just hear how doing the work makes a difference for someone, when I was able to see a different version of her today, it's just a reminder that there really is hope on the horizon. There's hope on the horizon.
Absolutely. Now, I know that every grief journey changes us in some way. Can you take us back to the beginning of your story and share what led you to create Timely Presence?
Yeah. So I am a nurse by background, so I signed up to care for people for a living. That is my calling. And I have loved my 25 years of nursing. It's Nurses Week, so shout out to any nurses listening. I really dedicated my life to doing that. And because of the type of nursing that I have done, I've worked in trauma ICUs, emergency departments. I have seen people in the worst moments of their lives and felt like I had a gift for really showing up for them in those moments. That was something that I felt I was uniquely talented with on the team. Some people are really good at saving lives. Not that wasn't a part of what I did, but I was good at the conversation.
Yeah.
But in 2023, my oldest son died unexpectedly from epilepsy. And I learned a few things through that process. So it is an initial, I call it the gasp, just this, you lose your air, the shock, the unanticipated news is really difficult to manage in the moment. You go from this gasp, your soul gasp, to immediately planning the goodbye. All the work that happens with we have so many rituals around death.
Yeah.
Obituaries, the service, the repast, the legions of people who come to support you. There's so many rituals. So you go from this gasp to the goodbye time period where you are like surrounded and wrapped with people. And then you enter grief. Then it sits, right? People go back to living, and you are back in a life where this person, this thing that was so important to you is no longer there. And I describe the absence of people in those initial moments when you realize they're gone. That silence is deafening. And I'm so blessed. I had people around me who made me sit in that, right? I was wanting to go, you're not ready to go back to work. You're not ready to resume normal activities. It's okay for you to opt out of the group dinner tonight, right? I had people who let me do that. But Mother's Day 2023 was 4 months after my son died. And it was so stress-inducing, the lead up to those days. There's banners, there's commercials, there's, what are you doing for Mother's Day? Right? Yeah. All those things. What do I want for Mother's Day? I want Darius back. And so I was entering, a re-aggravated, I'll say, state. It was heightened again. And my family decided to fly down from Ohio to Florida to spend the weekend with me. And their presence, the way that we sat, and we cried about Darius, but we laughed about him. We told stories about the time he did that thing. We told stories about that football game where he did X. And we recognized not just the loss, but the love. And it changed the whole tenor of the weekend. And that is really what became the spark for Timely Presence.
Yeah. And, I think that is such an important part of this conversation, because sometimes people see the mission, but they don't realize necessarily the pain that birthed it. It's like when you have a calling and we do all of this work, people just see the product that we created. They don't understand what we had to go through, and a lot of times what we're still going through in that process, because just because you've decided, oh, I'm going to be a grief counselor, doesn't mean that you don't still grieve.
That's right.
And so it's almost like every day you kind of rip the Band-Aid off again, but I love when I meet people who then take their pain and use it for their purpose, to say, hey, I know exactly how this feels, or I know I can empathize with what you're going through. Maybe it's not the same thing, and I'm not trying to compare my, pain, my grief, my trauma, whatever it is, to what you're going through, but I just get it, and sometimes we just need someone to say, I get it. Nothing else. I don't need you to say, I know how you feel. Like, I don't want to hear all the things. I just want to hear, I get it. And I got you. Right. And I think that a lot of healing work is, even created because somebody survived something that they never imagined that they would have to carry,
That truer words have not been said, right? So people, in their desire to connect and be helpful, say things all the time like, I would die if it were me. I wouldn't want to live anymore without my kids. So not helpful. Not a helpful statement.
You said, I thought about that over coffee today. Thanks.
But, I was in a moment where I said, the worst thing that ever happened to me. This is the worst thing that could happen to me, right? Parents should not outlive their children, full stop. It's the worst thing that ever happened to me. But there's only two choices. So I am definitely reshaped by this.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I can either allow Kelly to die too, or I can find a way to leverage his legacy and live on in a new direction.
Yeah.
And that's not easy, right? That's not something you just wake up on day 7 and say, okay, new vision, right? It came over time, but my son was cremated, and we have small urns of him because I like to take him on trips so he can go to parts of the world he never got a chance to realize. And I refused. We're moms. We walked over coals for these kids, right? I refuse to let his legacy end with many urns on a shelf. I just refuse to allow that happen.
Yeah.
So, that became the driver. Darius's story. Darius will be the inspiration for redefining the way we support people through grief. And that gets me up in the morning. It keeps me jazzed all night, all day. And it's what I think about when I go to sleep.
Yeah. And I think that, that perspective is so powerful, because people often assume that, be it like your experience or your expertise somehow protects you from heartbreak. And, you've experienced grief through multiple lenses at this point, as a nurse, a grief counselor, now a bereaved mother, and so people assume that, it's like they've kind of put you on a pedestal thinking, oh, well, she did this for a living, that you're okay. You know what I mean? But in reality, grief humbles all of us. It's one of those things that you can't get around. At some point, grief will humble you,
They call death the great equalizer, right? And it's on both sides of the coin, for the person in the grave and the people who met and love them. That's true. It's so true.
Yeah. And, I think that one of the hardest parts is realizing that knowledge doesn't remove the pain, and
Right.
so with, with your, everything that, you've experienced, how did losing your son shift your understanding of grief in ways that your professional background never could?
Yeah. So prior to him dying, I became a grief counselor after his death because I wanted to understand this. As a nurse, and I hadn't had significant losses too. That's important to note. My parents are both still alive. I haven't lost siblings. I had never lost a close friend. So a significant death was not something that I had lived through. However, as a fully adult woman, I had suffered some loss. I had had a divorce, right? I had lost friendships. And so we discount the resilience that we build in losses over life, right? We all face them. People lose jobs, people lose pets, people lose relationships and commitments. And how you learn through working with coaches and building community and having meaningful discussions to get through those losses can help give you baseline skills to manage bigger losses when they come. But work is important because loss can stack, right? Cumulative grief, they call it. If you don't integrate the losses, if you don't manage losses when they arrive and something else shows up, it becomes very complicated.
Yeah.
And so because one of the things that I will say that I'm grateful for is that because I had married early, divorced early, had young kids, my ex and I did not have a great relationship. There was a lot of grief in that. And for my kids, I had to figure out a way to show up, shake it off and show up through that. I gained some skills because of that. But the thing that I will say is the most important is, and people say this, your network matters. The people in your circle can help define how you manage through the toughest moments of your life. Yeah. If you surround with people who are supportive anyway, people who are cheering, who want to see you win, who call you out when you're moving in the wrong direction, right?
Yeah.
That network helps. And although no one in my network is a grief worker, one of my dearest friends gave me some permission to do things early in grief that matter. Mm-hmm. And the first thing she said was, quit responding now. You can't respond to these text messages and calls right now. Stop. Mm. Stop.
Yeah.
No one should be expecting that. Your son's dead. No one should be expecting that.
Yeah.
A few weeks in, I was going to start writing thank you notes for all this. She literally said, "Are you nuts?"
Yeah. We all need a friend like her in the world.
This isn't a wedding, right? Yeah. No one is expecting you to manage dozens of sympathy cards right now. You manage you. And so I had family and friends that did that for me, which was important. Mm-hmm. The other thing, I sought a coach early. I said, this is new for me, right? This side of the paradigm is new for me. And I sought a coach early. And the first thing she said when I met with her, and the last thing she said at every appointment was the same. Are you taking good care of you? Mm-hmm. And what do you mean? I said, no. And she said, the goals are going to graduate, but we're going to start with sleep. Your mind needs to rest. It's racing. It's saddened. It's right. Grief can be overwhelming. You can't think clearly. You're in a fog. Rest matters. You've got to eat something.
Yeah.
Whatever your favorite thing is that you will eat.
Yeah.
Jenny's ice cream, eat that.
Eat it. Yeah. Whatever it is, you just need to eat. We'll worry about working out later.
Right. That's right. She said, eat something every day. Eat something twice. Just. I'm not going to tell you how much. I'm not going to tell you what. Eat something. And the last thing that she said is, we undervalue the healing powers of nature. Right? God's creation has healing all in it. So get fresh air and sunlight. I don't care if that's walking to the mailbox. Do it once a day.
Yeah. Those slow walks to the mailboxes are game changers. People, they underestimate the power of just stepping out and letting God do what he does.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hearing a bird, the sound of a bird, right? A random butterfly. Those things became like 20 seconds of a salve to the soul, right? And I go back, I walked back into grief, but when I walked outside, I was walking into God's creation, and I intentionally tried to, for this minute, I'm just going to live in this. And you can do a minute a day.
Yeah.
You can do a minute a day. And so those small things, right? And you start doing a minute a day, and before you know it, you're doing a minute and 15 seconds, right? And then it becomes 30 minutes. And so you begin to build on that, but you start small. You don't start with, I had a great colleagues who called me and they said, we're taking you out Friday night. I'm out on bereavement leave. It's probably 2 months into the loss. We're taking you out Friday night. We're going to a comedy show and dinner, and then we'll go have a glass of wine. And I said, oh, that's so sweet. This is Monday. Oh, that's so sweet. By Tuesday, I was already stressed about it.
Yeah.
By Wednesday, it overtook the whole day, the fret around doing this, right? And so on Thursday night, I had to call and I said, I can't. But I love you guys for thinking of me. I love you for thinking of me. And I had people that gave me permission to do that. And you've got to know your limits. So while I could manage 5 minutes outside, I couldn't manage a 5-hour night out with friends at month 2. And I didn't judge me for that. Because you know what? Now I can take I'd love to take a 5-week trip with friends.
Yeah, you're like, let's go. We're catching flights. Yeah. And that's good that, that you recognize, hey, I can't do this. Because a lot of times we push through and we plaster smiles on our face and we go, and then we end up on the kitchen floor crying because we knew that we shouldn't have been out there in the first place. But, we're people pleasers. So we want to make sure that everybody else is okay. And we're the one who needs somebody to say, hey, are you okay? Yeah. And I know one thing that you said to me in a prior conversation, and it's something that really kind of stuck with me. You had made a comment about how the world shows up for the funeral and then people just disappear. What do you think people misunderstand the most about grief after those first few weeks?
Yeah. And I certainly didn't understand it as a nurse. I only lived in that acute phase, right? We live in the notification and the hours after. But the reality is, the realities of grief hit later. And everything is front-loaded. Everything is front-loaded. The funeral home that we worked with did a beautiful job on the services for my son. Beautiful job. And they sent me 2 things after the funeral. The first was a big biohazard container. This was a couple of years after COVID. It felt like a pandemic movie unfolding, and it were leftover ashes from some jewelry we had made. I thought that's weird that this came so poorly presented. The next thing came a few weeks later, and it was an envelope. And I thought, they're checking in. They know it's been a few months, and they're just checking in to see how it was. And I opened it, and it was his autopsy. Which no mother should read, right? And I'm a nurse, so I understood it explicitly, right? No one should read how much their son's brain weighs. And I thought, well, there has to be something better than that. That this is it. This is all that. That's our relationship. But very similarly, I got so many things from people who love me and care about me, colleagues. We had dozens of gifts, and I appreciated them all, but they all came in the first 2 or 3 weeks, right? The amount of flowers that came to the funeral, I mean, it was a garden. It was gorgeous. The funeral was in Ohio. I didn't live in Ohio. I had to leave them there. We outfitted several funerals after. Plants and flowers that sent to my house died. So that was another grief moment, right?
Yeah.
And soon, by about 4 to 6 weeks, people stop asking about it. They don't want to, they're afraid to trigger you. They don't want to remind you. People think when you go back to work, you're back, you're normal, you're moving through life. And no one wants to mention the kid that's not there. And in fact, you begin to see things like people complaining about their kids, and then they look at you.
Yeah.
And then they're embarrassed. They shift the subject. And so people just really stop talking around you about those things. And no one asks on Mother's Day, how are you doing? His birthday was Christmas Day. No one checks in to see, what do you guys even do on this holiday season? Just Chris, how are you living through Christmas? And it's not that they don't care. There's two things. One, people literally don't know what to say. They think they're re-traumatizing you. They don't want you to remember. You hear, I don't want you to remember. Here's a PSA. We don't forget.
Right.
And I don't want to forget my son. I don't want the world to forget my son. He matters.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's something we just need to quash. Bringing it up, hearing his name is the sweetest word in the English language to me. I love to hear it. This is spiritual. The sweetest name I know. Well, the second sweetest name I know is Darius.
Yeah.
I love to hear it. And the other thing is that people are just busy. We're busy. We're celebrating Mother's Day with our families. It's not that we're intentionally not thinking of you. It's that life really does keep moving. And so people have to be very intentional, because grief really peaks between months 3 and 6. And then the first anniversary of death is one of the most challenging days anyone will have who has lost someone that's close to them. So you've got an entire year of very tender moments. Research says birthdays, that first holiday season, a wedding anniversary, and the first anniversary of the loss triggers.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like an entire year of firsts.
And
then when it's tied to, a holiday, for example, you said his birthday's Christmas. So, that first year, if people were just saying Merry Christmas, you're like, and what else? Because again, they don't want to trigger you. And you said, people don't want to remember that, when we don't want to forget that.
That's right.
We don't want the hurt that comes with it, but we don't want to forget that. We forever want to still say their name, and acknowledge this happened. We can't ignore it. It doesn't go away, so we can't ignore it, and we don't want to either. And I think that's why so many people learn how to survive publicly while grieving silently, because you don't want, it's already bad enough that people isolate you, and you get why, because we've been the person who didn't want to trigger somebody else, but it's just kind of one of those things where I don't know, it's like I'm the type of person where I think, okay, just ask what you can do, because every situation that someone goes through is different. So maybe I don't know what Kelly needs, but as Shawnta, I know, hey, I could just ask Kelly, what do you need in this moment? And if it's just me to sit here, let's sit here. If you want to go through photo albums, let's go through it. You want to laugh, let's laugh. What do you need in this moment? I think that that's something that we just need to normalize. Stop showing up with buckets of chicken and just ask, what do you need or want in this moment?
That's right. Because I'm not even eating chicken week 2, right? I don't even want it. Right. So I mean, people have good intentions, but you're exactly right. You can't fix it's unfixable, right?
Yeah.
Grief unfolds. It doesn't fix.
Yeah.
But this conversation that I can be a safe space. So if you're mad about it and you want to talk, call me. If you're sad about it and you want to talk, I'll be here. If you want to scream about it, we can yell together. I don't have any preconceived ways for you to manage this, and it may look different day to day. But I'm coming over on Saturday. I'm not asking. I'm coming on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting with you.
Yeah.
And I'll be your safe space.
Absolutely. So sorry about that. Yeah. And that's the thing, just taking the initiative. And it's like that accountability piece to say, hey, I'll be there. Now, what we do when I get there, maybe I'm just going to come over and I'm going to do your laundry for you. Maybe I'm going to, take the trash out, or I'm just going to sit and stare at you, and how long I stay, that's on you, but I'm coming over. And, I think that's just a thing that people, again, just kind of need to normalize asking, what can I do for you? Or, even if you have something on your heart that you want to do and you think that it would be helpful, just simply say, hey, would it be okay if I bring dinner over Thursday night? And do you have a taste for anything in particular? Would you like something? Or is there something you absolutely don't want? Things like that. And just, getting a person's permission to do something prior to, and I think that even just that asking permission or asking, hey, would it be okay if I do this? That doesn't take their power from them. So if they say no, let's respect the no. We'll try again the next week or something. But I mean, just asking that question, you're not kind of like forcing yourself. I know when I went through the loss of my father in 2018, and I had just gotten married October of 2017. And then in March of 2018, a few weeks before I'm supposed to go on my honeymoon, my dad passes away. And I'm the youngest, but I was the one who handled everything. I definitely was a daddy's girl. And one of the last things that he said when he introduced the doctors to me was, hey, this is my daughter and she's the boss. So whatever she says goes, and he said that for years, but never did I think that was, this is my time to shine. This is my time to really be the boss. And I'm like, wow. But I was like, okay, he said what he said and I got to do what he said, but in that moment, there were a lot of people telling me what they were going to do. And I was like, maybe y'all didn't hear him, but he said, I'm in charge, So I'm like, we're not doing this. And, people were like, well, what do you want to do? Like my husband, so sweet. He said, do you want to cancel the honeymoon? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. We're going. And I said, and I'm going to plan this. My dad wanted to be cremated. So I said, I'm going to plan this and I'm going to get through all of this. And then we're going to go on this honeymoon because I'm going to need it after this, and that whole reconnection with nature for me, even on that honeymoon, I woke up every morning and sat on the balcony and had time with my dad. And it's just me in the ocean and, the sunrise and the sunset. And that was my thing. And so I pushed through because it was what I needed to do in that moment, and it was my choice to do so. And then when we went on that honeymoon, I made that time for me to feel all the things that I needed to feel after I handled all the things that I needed to handle.
Mhm.
But I can remember people kind of just imposing or throwing themselves. And I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want this. We're not
Mhm.
doing that, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that I had people in my corner who said, she said what she said. We're not doing that. And you have to put some people in their place sometimes. And I
Yes.
have that best friend who she just appears out of nowhere and tells you, what did she say? We're not doing that. And I'm like, okay, cool. But yeah, I think that if people would just start, just asking people more instead of just doing things or showing up or making it harder than what it needs to be, you know?
That's right.
um,
That's right.
yeah.
Just finding a space to say, can I just give you a hug?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I think of widows and widowers a lot who now are alone. Um, in grief, silence is deafening. Silence is the loudest noise you've ever heard in grief. And my dear neighbor lost her husband of 50 years, 3 months after Darius died. So we walked the journey together. And giving her a hug. There's nobody there with her.
Yeah.
Right? I'm so lucky. My husband was with me at the time. My younger son was still at home. My daughter, I had my best friend, had all these people around me all the time. I bought her a massage just for an hour of touch, right? People are not expecting you to show up as a bereavement counselor.
Yeah.
Right? Just there in whatever way and space fits into their lives and their needs. It's taking the kids to soccer practice on Saturday so you can sit at home. It's, you said, doing the laundry, which is a great gift for on a regular Tuesday, but it's a really good gift when you're in grief. Those things matter, and we underestimate them. We think that we have to come in as saviors, and there's no saving here. There is just acknowledging and sitting with, which allows us to show up better.
Yeah. And so how did your faith influence your healing journey after losing Darius? And, were there moments where your relationship with God changed through grief?
Yeah. So, me and God fell out for a little while. That's just the reality. My father spoke at the service, and, he talked a lot about how we know this, but the test is when it's hard. It's easy to recite. The test is in doing, when you trust God implicitly, right? We say that. Father, you are the master, the Alpha and the Omega. You knew the hairs on my head, right? So the plan for Darius to die young was from inception. That was the plan. I was angry about that. I want to understand why. I have been a good person. I've dedicated my life to sitting with people in their toughest moments and nursing them out of that. I have been a good daughter. I have been a good sister. I have been a good friend, right? You try to justify, I've earned my wings here, right? And what we know is that God is no respecter of persons. We all are flawed and perfectly imperfect in His sight. And B, some answers you don't get, but one day this really hit me. I was actually talking to someone who's very close to me about this, and my kind of anger at God, like, is this reward? This is reward. And through that conversation, I came to a realization that I never would have chosen this. I never would have chosen this. But he actually chose to sacrifice his son for us.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to another bereaved parent here, right?
Yeah.
Who actually said, I will give his life in my son went to sleep and didn't wake up. Peaceful. That is a measure of comfort. He left peaceful. His son was spat on, cursed, dragged, nailed, right? And he did that for us. That's a level of sacrifice. And when you think about that, you have to say, I'm not sure the reason.
Yeah.
But I know there is one. And because I believe we will be, this wasn't goodbye. It was see you later. It is see you later.
Absolutely.
So that's how I've processed it. But it was a year of contention, I'll say.
Yeah.
I grew up a believer, so that helped, right? I had something to lean back on, but it was tough. Thanks for that question.
Yeah. Well, and I definitely asked because I know that, again, another grief that I had experienced was miscarrying my twins. And it was early on. But it was one of the things where I prayed for this. I went through fertility treatment. So when I say it was a planned pregnancy, it was planned to the T. And, being a nurse, you know how that goes, And so, prior to getting pregnant, I was kind of just going through this depression already, thinking that, I'm not much of a woman because I can't conceive, and, just really beating myself down and just really questioning all the things. And so I'm praying and I'm doing all the things, and then I get pregnant and I'm like, oh God, yes, you've answered, my prayers. Like, thank you. And I can honestly admit after the fact, my prayers ceased. Because I got what I wanted, just like, spoiled little kids. We get what we want. We go on about our business, forgetting who gave us all these things. And I ended up miscarrying, and I found out on Christmas Eve. So we, have something in the holiday, unfortunately, in common, right? To share. But it was one of those things where I found out I was pregnant on Thanksgiving. Found out that I miscarried on Christmas Eve. And I'm like, God, what are you doing to me? How am I ever going to forget these dates because they're tied to the holidays and things like that. And again, I went through my own frustration. First time in my life that I had been angry with God. Turned my back. Well, I thought I turned my back, but I had conversations with him every day. I was just pouting, telling him how angry I was. But, I threw a tantrum, and it lasted for probably a year and a half of me thinking I just don't care anymore. But thank God, I was covered and protected, that whole time. But then I finally understood it and came to the realization that he gave me what he gave me to relieve that burden that I was carrying of thinking that I'm not a woman, or that I'm inadequate, or that something is wrong with me. And he had to take it when he took it, because the more I grew connected to it, the harder it would have been. And so, again, my understanding and the way that I made peace with it was, just that to prove to me that there is nothing wrong with me, that he made no mistake with me, and that he had to, end things when it ended, to spare me from that, heartbreak and heartache that was going to come if I continued to stay connected, to them. And it was just one of those things where I then started appreciating the timing of it, because even then, it all happened. I'm a very new year, new me kind of person. And so to know that I went through all of that before another new year. And so that next year was kind of like the fresh start of my life. And it didn't it didn't help that I was in an abusive relationship at the time. So it was just one of those things where after the fact, I was able to see that this was never a good idea in the first place for me to bring children into this. And that there was work that I needed to do on me, but I was able to step into it knowing that I'm not broken, that there is nothing wrong with me, and I can move forward healthier. And so, yeah, like when I was doing the research, and getting information about you for the podcast, and then I seen like the timely presence immediately, it took me back through my own journey because I'm like, yeah, timing, like that timing is everything. And, you created timely presence around, emotionally significant dates, the birthdays, the anniversaries, the holidays, those unexpected hard days. And so, like I said, it was just kind of, I don't know, it was just that alignment for me in that piece right there. And so I'm just curious, why are those dates so important in the grieving process?
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's so clear in the research that it is predictable that people will have grief aggravation on those days, right? And when you think about it, those are days that are built around rituals. We live our lives around rituals. We live our lives around memorialization in some way. And so we have things that we always do for our husband's birthdays or our child's birthdays. We have ways we always celebrate Mother's Day. As really not only as families, but as a larger society. It's Mother's, in May, you begin seeing, in April, you begin seeing the commercials and the banners and the pop-ups. Don't forget Mother's Day, right? It's everywhere because we love ritualizing things. And so when the ritual changes because of the absence of someone who it was either built around to recognize or who was always an integral part of it, it dysregulates our nervous systems. We don't know how to process that. And so one of the best things that can happen for the bereaved is creating new rituals.
Yes.
Right? You reframe the ritual. And so for Christmas, Darius's birthday, it just isn't tenable for me to sit around a tree. That's just not what we're going to do. That's not how we will celebrate it anymore. We take a trip. We take a family vacation. His ashes go with us, and we do something fabulous. We rent a boat and go out on the boat for the day and spread his ashes in the ocean. Or we'll go. This year. I might step out on a limb and go ziplining that day. But we do things that he didn't, and we reframe it, right? So it's built around his legacy, but it makes the day different than it was, which allows me to not sit in the grief of what used to be. Yeah. And we sit in the celebration of what is. Yeah. Recognition, the celebration of what is. And so that's the thing with the dates. Rituals matter and creating new ones. And that's anything from lighting a candle. You see people letting balloons off on the Memorial Day, the annual Memorial Day, or something that you've done to reframe that day is a really important skill in the grief recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of times I see people mourning every year. They mourn. And that's always something that has been completely uncomfortable to me. I always tell people I'm awkward when it comes to grief and death because I don't understand, why people do certain things. Like I definitely respect it, but I can't wrap my head around certain things that people do. And it's that constant mourning of something. And I'm like, I'm not saying that I think that people need to forget, because obviously we never do, but why aren't we celebrating the life? And it's like, you had a celebration of life when you had the funeral. So then why did we shift to mourning every year? Or it's their birthday. Why are we mourning? Because that was always a happy occasion, And so I think that, people need to start to understand like healthy grieving. Because a lot of people are stuck in a very unhealthy pattern where every year, like clockwork, we are crying and, we are depressed and we are sad. And I know that these are all emotions that we need to get, to feel. I don't mean like get over, but like kind of get through, to feel the things. But I think that people need to, like you said, kind of embrace the celebration. And that doesn't mean, make a joke of it or anything like that, but we have to remember the good times. Otherwise, the bad or the negative things surrounding it will drown us. It's going to take us out. And so what does healthy grieving mean to you personally, especially in a culture that often rushes people to be okay?
Yeah, great question. Remembrance matters. Remembrance matters, right? It does several things. One, it keeps legacy alive, which is very important. People always fear that that person is forgotten. And one way to do that, to not allow that to happen, is memory. And so in the initial phases of my personal grief, I didn't always feel comfortable bringing it up to people who weren't comfortable discussing it. I have moved way past that. If you talk to me, we talk about Darius. That's just what it is. But in the immediate post phase, this is how I got it out. When I would answer spam calls, all those calls that you blocked now, I unblocked them.
Yeah.
So when they called me to say, do I want new windows? I said, no, I'm not interested. Well, can you tell me why? Because my son's dead. So do new windows help with that? I just needed to say it. I just needed to get it out. As you move through it, talking about the person matters. And so memory, remembrance, it matters. It's a light. It's healing. It is an opportunity to celebrate. Rituals matter. So intentionally create. They will not create themselves.
Yeah.
And your person best, right? And how they like to be remembered. So if your father liked strawberry cake, then we have strawberry cake on his birthday.
Yeah.
Right? Because we honor, and we say things like, this is the best strawberry. Dad would be all in on this, right?
Absolutely.
It brings light, it chuckles, joy. You keep them close on the days that matter. But the absence of them never goes away. The hurt never goes away, but we have to begin reframing that, because the reality is, to your point, you restructured in your mind the miscarriage story, right? Mm-hmm. And we have a special collection and timely presence for women with pregnancy, loss, and stillbirth, because people rarely remember a baby they didn't meet, right? But you will never forget them.
Right.
But you've restructured, the loss. It happened. It's years ago. There's nothing you can do there. What it did was set you up, right, in a mental frame where you could be at peace with the fact. I love what you said, that I am a woman, right? It connected you back to the center of you. And so what I always say is, your loved one loved you. You loved them, they loved you. Don't lose the part of you that made you. Yeah. And so they'll look different. My neighbor loved to travel with Mike. She can't travel with Mike, but she travels. She travels in honor of Mike, right? Mm-hmm. You reframe it. Yeah. But you figure out a way to not lose you. It's the best way to honor the people you love.
Yeah. And I love that perspective, because I think that, healthy grieving doesn't mean forgetting, right? Okay. It just, and also it doesn't mean pretending. It definitely doesn't mean forcing yourself to move on for other people's comfort. It just means, how do I get through this enough to keep going? And for me, even with that situation with the miscarriage, I made sure that I remained healthy enough to keep going. And I personally made the choice not to conceive thereafter. but obviously I was open to it if God wanted it, but to this day I have not, and I'm okay with that. I no longer feel less than a woman. And I moved forward, and actually I adopted a little boy, whose mother was unalived a few weeks after my miscarriage. And, a whole year or so goes by, and we cross paths, and so then I became the mother to someone who needed a mother. And the way I explained the story to him, because he was 2 when I first got him, he is the exact age that my twins would have been, which is crazy. And so that number 2 was very powerful for us. But I just kind of explained to him, like, hey, you needed a mommy here on earth, and my babies needed a mommy in heaven. So we traded places, and that always leaves us connected. And I never wanted him to lose the connection to her, because he was 10 months, when she had passed away. So it was my way of making sure that we both always remembered, where we came from and who we were connected to. And that helped me. And I think that God sent him to me to continue to heal me, because every year with him got easier for me. And I never forgot them. I still remember Christmas Eve still stings a little, I still remember the scheduled due date and, all of those things. So it's like, we never forget them, but you start to navigate them a little easier. And you have the opportunity to remember good times, and good feelings. And that's something that no one else can take from you. And, people can't change that. So yeah, I think that's why it's just really important to also just talk about it. Whether you go to therapy, whether you talk about it with your friend, your family, I don't care if you push the button and talk about it on social media. Like, I need you to talk about what you're feeling. I need you to get it out.
Get it out.
Yeah.
And it is a public health concern.
Yeah.
Unintegrated grief.
Yeah.
And in the Black community, in the African American community, we are not great at processing grief. And there's a lot of grief. It's not all death, right? But it's all loss. Grief is all related to loss. So there's a lot of loss that people experience, and it's unintegrated. And what we know is unprocessed, unintegrated, unaddressed grief leads to increased rates of high blood pressure, cardiac events. It leads to stroke. It leads to mental health disorders. It leads to substance use and alcoholism. All these things that are chronically affecting the population can be at times linked back to unresolved grief and trauma, as you know. And so addressing it is not just a way to get from here to there, but it is actually a public health concern.
Yeah.
And to sum up what you said, grief will reshape you. There is zero question about that. You cannot be the same. I don't want to be the same person I was. I've had a significant change. It should have affected me somehow, but it is not going to define me. It is not going to define me. We are going to live around the grief. And I know you've seen the illustration. It says, in grief, there's a jar. And the jar is the same size. The jar represents the body, but the boulder inside of it changes, or the boulder doesn't change the size, but the jar does. And so the boulder is grief. And when it first happens, it takes up the whole jar. And over time, the jar gets bigger because you grow and you figure out how to grow while carrying that grief. The grief never goes away. The loss never goes, but you get stronger. You get more skilled at managing and remembering and ritualizing and celebrating. And over time, be patient, do the work, have the conversations, cry.
Yeah.
Be mad, be sad. All those things are important. It's part of the process. But over time, you grow and figure out how to carry what you thought was uncarryable.
Yeah. And so, as someone who supports others through grief professionally, how do you protect your own emotional well being while carrying space for so many other, heavy stories?
Yeah. I am, they tell you you can't, they told us as a nurse this too, you can't show emotion. I don't believe that. What I can't do is break down.
Yeah.
I can't be hysterical and need a client to console me. But I can empathize and I can feel your pain. I can relate your pain to mine. And we do that. I do that. And I think that's helpful for them on the journey too. I'm not stoic. I am a part of this process with you. I talk about Darius. I talk about the loss. Everyone who's close to me knows as Mother Day arrives, we got to check on her, or I tell my network how to. At this point, I'm able to verbalize it, right? You can't do that with
Yeah.
I'm able to verbalize it. I need you guys to show up for me at this time. I do a lot of praying. But I have this was one of the first gifts I received, and it's now a gift in timely presence because it was so impactful to me. I have a wind chime that memorializes Darius, and I love to listen to it. It is an interactive gift, right? I talk to him, it's like he's talking back to me, and God knows when I need that, knows when I need a windy day. And, I believe that Darius is still, he's the reason I became a mother, my oldest child. He's the reason I became a nurse. And he is the reason we started Timely Presence. And so he is still guiding my steps. And sometimes I go out there and I'm like, I need your help, son. I have found a way to stay connected to him, and that is very soothing to me on the rough days.
Yeah. You always have to have something that allows you to connect. I know, like with me and my dad, it was music. That was our thing. And, my dad was a DJ. And so me now writing music and, producing music as an AI creator, it is just one of those things where when I'm sitting here focused in, my studio, it's like my dad is sitting right here with me. And I'm like, do you hear that, Dad? Like, is that right? No, we need to fix this. You know what I mean? And so it's just one of those things where it's a moment for just me to reconnect with him. And it's that reminder that, he's still with me and he's still watching me, and all the things. And that's what helps me get through, to the next moment. And it's like when I find myself vibrating a little low, I'm like, it's time to go write another song. It's time to go do this or something to just reconnect, or just to even grab my headphones and go sit in the park and turn the music up. And, my dad loved jazz and blues, and I find myself in love with that now, So like, I'll just go sit in the park and I'll put my headphones on, or maybe I'll just turn the music up in the car and I'll just feel what I need to feel. And then I go home and my husband's like, you okay? I'm like, I'm better now. Thanks. And he respects that that's what I need. Or if I say, hey, I need to go listen to music, I don't have to say it. I don't have to explain it. He understands that's what she needs right now. Let me give her space. Let her do her self-care. And so again, I'm thankful that I am at the point now, what you brought up, that we can, speak to what we need and what we need other people to do. And I know that it takes time for people to do that. But again, until you start letting out some of it, you won't make room for that conversation. And so it's very important that people just kind of open up. But again, especially in our community, we're not taught, we're taught what happens in our house stays in our house. So when grief happens in your house, you keep it in the house, and our ancestors meant well, but we got to break that curse because that's crazy work. It's just crazy
You're
work.
taught not to cry. You better cry. You lost somebody you love. You better cry, and you better cry a lot, right? Get that out. Get that out.
And if you don't, they're going to lock you up and tell you that you're crazy. So, I mean, it's one of those unfortunate kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So you just might as well cry. Like, you might as well get it out, and I'm like, if you're angry, okay, be angry. If you feel like breaking something, let's choose wisely, but they have rage rooms for this. Right? Let's not destroy
exactly
your
right.
things. Let's go to the
That's
rage room,
That's right. Buy
Let
a
me go
punching
to the
bag.
dollar store. Yeah, I'm
That's
like, let me
right.
go to the dollar store and buy you some cheap plates to break. Like,
That's
let's not
right.
mess up the good china, okay? But I mean, again, you have to figure out how to let it out. Otherwise, it's just going to boil and boil. And then when the next thing happens, you might not survive that next thing. And
That's
we know
right.
life is all about next things. So we've got to figure out how to get through this thing so we can handle the next thing.
That's right.
Um, and
Stacked
so,
grief kills.
yeah. And so, what would you say to someone listening today who feels maybe abandoned in their grief, especially if the support around them has now just faded away?
So first, I would just say I'm sorry. I'm sorry, and I am holding space for that because it is uh, the loneliest feeling to feel like you've been forgotten in this journey. Second, what I would say is call somebody that you know cares and share.
Yeah.
I feel alone, right? Um, Football season's hard, or I'm anxious about the holidays. It's not that people don't care; they don't know. They don't know the journey if they haven't walked it. So tell them, be vulnerable, and share, and tell them that you need some support, and this is you're feeling alone. Make space to invite people in, because we don't ask, and that's problematic too.
Yeah.
Um, Whatever your faith belief system is, connect to it. So, however that looks or feels for you, get connected to that. That can be God and higher power. That can be nature. Whatever that is that centers you and provides hope. Get some connection there. People who have the research says people who are connected to some higher power recover quicker, more thoroughly than others. Um, and lastly, I say make some rituals, reframe those moments that are super tender into something new. So we're not going to, if we always went fishing with dad on Father's Day, we're not going to spend Father's Day locked in a room this year. We're going to go on a pier with a fishing pole, and we're going to go out there and we're going to talk to dad while we collect some new fish, and we're going to honor him that way. Make your own new ritual, and it can be emotional, but it will be healing in and of itself as you honor the life and legacy in a new way.
Absolutely. And, I also want to hold space for the listener who may be on the other side of this conversation too. The people who truly want to support someone grieving, but feel afraid of saying the wrong thing or just not knowing what to do. So what would you say to, the friend, spouse, sibling, coworker, or, even just community member who wants to support someone grieving, but doesn't know how to keep showing up?
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is the worst thing to say is nothing. That's the worst statement you can make is none. So let's get that out there. People have grace for fumbles.
Yeah.
People feel rejected and isolated with nothing. Two, I will say your job's not to fix it, right? You can't. There's not a psychologist that can fix it. There's not a grief counselor that can fix it. It's a process. It's a process that can be supported, guided, but it's not one that can be resolved. And so just know that. And I think people really appreciate the authenticity and vulnerability of saying, hey, coach, I don't know what to say, but I want you to know I'm here.
Yeah.
I don't have the words. I don't even know if I really understand what you're going through, but I'm sorry, and I'm here.
Yeah.
And do that not the day of the funeral, It's great to do that the day of the funeral, but 100 other people are going to do it the day of the funeral.
Yeah.
Do it 3 weeks later. Do it 3 months later. Do it as the holidays are coming in. Just check in, check up, check in, show up. You don't have to come with elaborate things. Just come with presence. And I will never forget the people who showed up for me and the ones who didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And, honestly, Kelly, I think that this entire message keeps bringing us back to that one powerful truth, that presence matters. Not just in the beginning, not just when everybody else is watching, but in the ordinary moments too. When people hear the phrase presence doesn't expire, what do you hope that they carry with them long after this conversation ends?
I think that they recognize that their person's going to be different, right? There are aspects of them that will never be the same. And so this idea that they're back to normal is fallacy. Even if you can't see it, the effort it takes for somebody to show up on this Thursday afternoon, the anxiety that's produced by an upcoming Thanksgiving holiday, all of those things are working in the background. So they're different. And so you have to make space for that, right? Employers need to understand that the first 18 months after a bereaved employee comes back to work, unaddressed grief reels. There's increased absenteeism. There's decreased productivity. They're at higher risk for leaving the job. So having the touch points where you just pull them out in the office and you say, Kelly, it's been a few months since you lost your sister. I'm just checking in. Are you seeing anybody? How are you managing things? Are you balancing work and the grieving process okay?
Yeah.
Those things matter, and they can pay off in ways the loyalty you gain from an employee from having those types of conversations, the bonds you build with a friend, the love that's expanded in an intimate partnership from those conversations and check-ins is priceless. Yeah. And don't just rely on yourself to do that. If you're listening to this, actually pull your phone out and put some reminders on there, because life moves fast. It moves fast. And if you're not intentional, it will slip your mind, and 9 months will go by and you won't have said a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this conversation has been incredibly powerful, grounding, and honestly deeply needed. I think that these are the types of conversations that we need to have more of. And again, for me being someone, like I said, I'm, socially awkward when it comes to grief. That's not the ministry that God put on me, because I'm the person where I would show up to console you and I'm crying right next to you. And you're like, is it me or is it happening to you, girl? What are you doing? I would never I could never be the one to present the bad news, because it is written all over my face and I'm going through it. And you probably can't get through it because I've gone through it for you, But I think that these are the conversations that we need to have. And I'm thankful and grateful again that, your greatest pain has turned into something more purposeful for you and for others as well. You are helping a lot of people through the darkest, worst moments of their lives, and still navigating the darkest, worst moment of yours as well. And so I just thank you for being obedient to the calling. And for being there for people like myself. I've learned a lot in this conversation, and I'm just thankful. And I know that there are a lot of other people within this community and all over the world who are going to be sitting there like, exactly. because whether you are the person grieving or the one not knowing what to do for the person grieving, you have touched something in our spirit to say, okay, if nothing else, let me try this. Let me see if this works. And I'm still going to show myself grace. Okay, she didn't want me to bring chicken. Maybe she wants lasagna. I'm going to try again. But what I'm not going to do is give up on them.
That's right.
And
That's
yeah,
right.
so
That's
before we
right.
close, I want to give you space to share, how our listeners can connect with you, learn more about Timely Presence, support your work, and any upcoming, projects or maybe offerings that you would like people to know about.
Yes. So our website is thetimelypresence.com. So on there, you will find access to our blog and resources that do a lot of teaching there. We have our collections, which are able to be purchased for people that you want to support. And through Timely Presence, we show up for a full year with curated, personalized gifts that come on the moments that matter the most. So it shows up all year long. And there's just information about my story and how we got here. So thetimelypresence.com. On our social pages, we do a lot of teaching, a lot of education, helping the grieving and those who want to support them. So you can find us on Instagram at The Timely Presence. You can find us on Facebook on Timely Presence, and then you can follow me where I also do a lot of teaching, a lot of moments of recognition and helping you understand how to show up on LinkedIn, just Kelly Edmondson, and on Instagram at the.Kelly Edmondson. So lots of spaces for you to show up. We have launching soon we have a newsletter that's available now, but we'll have a more informed newsletter that'll be coming out starting the next couple of weeks. And we have a book in the making. So more to come.
Yes. Thank you so much again, for coming into the Room to Breathe and trusting us with your story, your heart, and your wisdom. I truly believe that this conversation is going to help people feel less alone in seasons that they've quietly been carrying by themselves. And I also think that it's going to challenge listeners to rethink what support really looks like, not just showing up for the grief publicly, but remaining present privately when the noise dies down. So thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, anytime. We are happy to have you back because again, conversations like this, they don't just magically fix themselves. And I want them to be conversations that we keep having. So I welcome you back into the Room to Breathe anytime.
It's a beautiful experience. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you. And family, listen, if today's episode spoke to you in any way, let this be your reminder that grief is not weakness. Missing someone deeply is not something that you fail at healing from. Love leaves fingerprints on our lives, and healing does not require you to erase the people that you carry in your heart. So if you're grieving right now, whether your loss is fresh or years old, I hope that today reminded you that your feelings are valid, that your process is your own, and that you do not have to rush yourself to make other people feel comfortable. And if someone you love is grieving, maybe the greatest gift that you can offer isn't the perfect words. Maybe it's consistency. Maybe it's remembering. Maybe it's just you being present. Now, before we close out today's episode, I just want to leave you with a little extra love and a whole lot of light. As always, I am here to remind you to keep breathing through the highs, the lows, and every moment in between. Just keep breathing. I want you to keep choosing peace, even on the days it feels far away, even when it doesn't come easy. And I need you to hear me when I say this. You are not alone. Here at the Room to Breathe community in the Self-Care Club, you are always seen, always valued, and always supported exactly as you are. And if you're looking for a space to stay connected beyond this episode, a space where you can be poured into, supported, and grow alongside others who are also on their healing journey, I invite you to join us inside the Room to Breathe Project community over on School. That's where the conversations continue and the real work happens together. So don't shrink. Don't silence yourself. Don't talk yourself out of the space that you deserve. I encourage you to take up space, speak your truth, and make a little room for you to breathe. I love each and every one of you to life, and I am praying that your day is not just amazing, but aligned, intentional, and yes, on purpose, filled with purpose. This has been another Room to Breathe podcast, and I cannot wait to connect with you all again soon. Until next time, keep choosing you.